Welcome to the NFL MVP Momentum Podcast. I'm Sam Holcroft, joined alongside Payton Thompson. Before we begin, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP, follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. And before we even begin, we would just want to thank everyone for coming out and showing the support during the live stream. Sorry, it is about 3 weeks after the Super Bowl. My computer got so mad that the Chiefs won back-to-back Super Bowls that it didn't want to process a highlight video for the live stream. So a couple $100 later, my computer is finally working again. So, and now that, we're in the off season, we're kind of right around the corner from free agency and, building up to the draft. I think it's probably a fun topic to have is about the Bears and their quarterback situation, because as of 7:30 on March 2nd, Justin Fields is still a Bear. Now, is he rumored to be going to the Falcons? That could go down tomorrow. It could also go down never. It could be going to a different team. So just looking at this quick draft order. The Bears have obviously number 1 overall pick, thanks to Carolina. Thank you, Bryce Young. They still have their own pick at 9, but there's a lot of other teams that could be trading up to try to get that number 1, to try to trade for Justin Fields. But the two choices that the Bears really have is you draft Caleb Williams and trade Justin Fields, or you trade the number 1 overall pick again and keep Justin Fields. So, PT, we're going to discuss the one that is most likely not going to happen, and that is the Bears trading the number 1 overall pick again. So, on March 10th is when they traded the Panthers the number 1 overall pick, and they got that. They got DJ Moore and a bunch of other first-round picks. So, PT, right now, what is the odds that the Bears will trade the number 1 overall pick again?
I think the odds of them trading this pick, because of the type of prospect that Caleb Williams is, and we can go into that a little bit more, but I would say it's up probably a firm 20%. I would say, number 1, there's always going to be a chance that it happens, because I feel like if you can get a ransom, if you can get a crazy offer, it's going to be really hard to turn it down, especially if it's to a team that's at 5 or 6. I mean, obviously not the Chargers here, but, maybe 6 or 7, Giants, Tennessee, maybe Falcons at 8. If you can get multiple firsts, some seconds, a player, maybe player 2, then I mean it's going to be hard to turn down. But at the same time, I feel like this is where you can. Ryan Poles being a new GM, this is I think his second year, maybe third, but I think second. You could look really smart, obviously getting a lot of picks for that number 1 last year from Carolina, and then being able to actually draft a guy that is probably a better prospect and is probably going to be a better player ultimately. I think he just has a little bit higher upside, and we can kind of go into his profile a little bit later, but I wouldn't say it's a very high percentage chance, because, if you end up trading him and he ends up becoming, a top 6, 7 quarterback even, I think you're really kicking yourself, because I just, and it's really early, but I just don't know if I see that kind of potential upside in Justin Fields. Maybe he could have it, but I think you've seen enough of Caleb Williams' tape in college where you feel confident that even his floor is going to be, a top 15 quarterback in the NFL. Whereas I think Justin Fields, you really don't know what his floor is. I think, his floor could potentially be 20, but I would say it's probably about the ceiling. And I just don't think that, even where Justin Fields is at and the kind of, season he had last year, I'm not sure his ceiling is top 8, top 7. But again, it's really early, but I just think it would be a smart and wise decision to go with Caleb Williams here, because, whether he works out or not, like I said, again, he's going to have a high ceiling, high floor. And no one's going to knock you for drafting him number one, because ultimately you were able to get a lot of picks last year from Carolina, and he's the consensus number one.
Yeah, let's see if they show. Okay, so last year, this technically is the running offer for what you have to do to get the number one overall pick.
At
Um,
at 9.
at 9.
At 9, yeah.
So they get DJ Moore. They get Carolina's first and a late second from last year, this year's first, and next year's second. So 2 seconds, 2 firsts, and DJ Moore. But that also included, like, I guess, the swap.
Yeah.
So if that's the running for the number 9 team to get up there, because really no one saw the Panthers, trying to make that jump. And also, I mean, they gave up so much that maybe that's what they had to do in order to get up. But everyone kind of thought it was a fleece at the time. But, I look at some of these teams, it's like, what could you really do to try to get up there? And, the only team that, pick wise this year, to me, makes a little bit of sense is Arizona, because they have 2 first round picks that they could give up this year. They got pick number 4, pick 27, and maybe they throw in like a next year's third, next year's second, and that's about it. So,
I don't know if that's going to be enough.
It might not be, but they're also keeping a pick in the top 4, because obviously, if they go up there, they're also going to be trading Kyler Murray if they do that. So then they could end up getting a first back, gotcha. Like whether that's like, I don't know what team, like Minnesota
from Atlanta, maybe,
Atlanta could, yeah. But then that would also mean that the Bears are sticking with Justin Fields. So that's, just a lot going on there. But other than that, it's going to have to be a pretty stellar package. If you're in that top 5, it's a lot easier because, they're still getting a top 5 pick, because they really need offensive tackles, preferably maybe an edge rusher and a receiver. So if they can get one of the top 3 receivers and either one of the top tackles or a top edge rusher, then they're good. But if they were to do that and have to get someone outside of the top 10, because they're already getting someone at 9, that's going to fill one of their spots. They need another one. If you go with 4 or 5, that you're going to either get your top tackle or Marvin Harrison Jr., because obviously Arizona, if they trade up to 1, they're getting a quarterback. Washington, 99% sure now that they're going quarterback.
Yeah.
And New England, they're going quarterback. So Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be there at 4. So,
65% chance. Me personally, I agree with you. I think New England will go quarterback, but I wouldn't rule out Marvin Harrison there. I wouldn't do it. Especially with Jared Mayo being there. I just feel like they have enough self-awareness, especially in that front office, where, they will recognize that they're not ready to win now, especially not in that division right now. And so, they may just take, the best player in the future, or, I don't want to say, it's hard to compare receiver and quarterback, but it's a guy where no matter how bad your season goes next year, that he'll be good continuously. Whereas if you draft a quarterback here, you don't give him the proper weapons, the proper time to develop, first year head coach, and things go disastrous, it may look a lot worse, may hurt his confidence. So, I think they're going to go quarterback because I think they're going to have a couple guys on their board they're going to like a lot, but I wouldn't rule out that Marvin Harrison would be there. But here's the thing about that, is that if Chicago drafts down to 4, and then Marvin Harrison is off the board, but Jaden Daniels is there, or let's just say, some crazy happens and Drake May is at 4, they can get another package from Atlanta or the Raiders or Minnesota and just keep piling on those picks. So that they have so many picks at their disposal where they can honestly trade a couple of firsts for a really good receiver and then still keep building. So yeah, either way, whether MHJ is there or not, that you're going to be able to get a haul or you can get a really good player.
Yeah. The only counter I have to that New England take is if Washington ends up going Drake May and Jaden Daniels is there at 3. Wouldn't that Jaden Daniels and Gerard Mayo kind of give you a little bit of a CJ Stroud and D'Amico Ryans kind of vibe? We just had a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach make the playoffs. Now, obviously, New England still has a lot of holes. They had a lot of guys step up. Also had a really good free agency last year. Not saying the Patriots can't do that, but if it's there,
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I mean, they're probably going to take a quarterback because they've seen the success of that kind of result. My only thing that I would say to that, and like I said, they're probably gonna take a quarterback because if Jane Daniels ends up being a really good quarterback, top 10 quarterback in 3 years, he doesn't even have to have the kind of rookie year CJ Stroud has. If he just has a really good first couple years, then on another team and you could have drafted him, then that could cost you your job, all the way up to the front office and the head coach. So I think they will take him, but I just think that they probably know they don't need to rush it, and you have no guarantee that he's going to be as good as CJ Stroud was in year one. So I just think it's a little bit riskier in the short term, but is kind of what they're betting on.
yeah. So we kind of talked about a few teams that could maybe sneak their way up there, but all right. So let's say I don't remember the general manager's name for the Bears, but he comes out and says, "We're drafting Caleb Williams at number 1."
Mm-hmm.
That's off the table. Now everyone's calling for who are the teams that are interested in Justin Fields. Who I guess obviously go ahead and go on your Atlanta rant.
Well, I don't need to make this all about me and my team. I'm gonna pull up the teams on Tankathon here and kind of see who could be scouting for him. Obviously Atlanta is on the top part of the board. I think that Atlanta has enough draft capital. I think that with Raheem Morris coming in, I think he would like a guy like Justin Fields. It just kind of makes a lot of sense, just in general. So, I think that could be a really good option for Justin and for the Bears too, because they're going to be able to get, nothing crazy, but a nice little package. I think that they could negotiate pretty well. And, I don't expect Atlanta to trade their number 8 for him at all or anything like that, but they're going to have that third they get from the Jaguars from Calvin Ridley playing those snaps, and then they're going to have, I want to say they have 2 seconds. Let me check here real quick. No, okay, so they have 1 second, 2/3, and just regular haul of picks. So I could even see something like a second, Jacksonville's third at 79, maybe a sixth and maybe a future third or some combination of that. So, and if you're Atlanta and you need a quarterback because Atlanta has no quarterback, and this is assuming that Kirk Cousins goes to the Vikings or some other team that's ready to win now and wants to give him that guaranteed money, because I think that's kind of the holdup with them. Then they don't really have a lot of other great options. Now, the one caveat to Justin Fields is that whether, he's probably going to have to play well to do it, but he's going to get paid, the year after you get him. So, that's kind of the thing where you have to commit to him long term, or else you're kind of back in the same position you were the year before. You had given up draft capital and you need to get a quarterback, and you still may not be very good, but you may be out of the running of a top quarterback at that point. So we'll kind of see there, but The other team that I think would be in the running for him is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that with, you know, obviously we know how I feel about Arthur Smith, but I feel like he's the type of quarterback with his wide zone scheme, drawing up first reads, really liking a lot of, the run game. I think it would be a really good match for him as his quarterback. And, I think his personality, like Atlanta, fits well in Pittsburgh. I think he's better than Kenny Pickett. I think his upside is a lot higher. And I think their floors are pretty similar, to be honest with you, um, because I think both their bad games can be pretty bad, but I think his rushing ability, and I'm not saying Kenny Pickett's not a rushing threat, but with Justin Fields having that power, a little bit higher high speed, things like that, I think that it makes a lot of sense to kind of upgrade there. But let's just kind of check in on their picks here. They have they have their regular haul, but they also have an extra fourth rounder. So they don't have, obviously a third rounder is a lot higher than a fourth. You're talking about, what, maybe 40, 50 picks. And that could be the biggest difference between a guy that's going to be a year two starter or a guy that never really sees the field, honestly, if we're keeping it frank. So it is a big jump there. Obviously they could give a second and some future picks, but yeah, I think personality wise, play style wise, it makes sense for both teams. I will say though that I think that the fit with Atlanta would be a little bit better just because I think they have a little bit more upside on their weapons, especially considering that they have that number 8 pick. And I'm telling you, I don't know if I want it to happen or not, but I would not be surprised if we drafted a receiver at 8, and then you have your slot receiver, your speed guy, which is what Atlanta needs, next to Drake London, a big, tall, vertical threat, and Kyle Pitts can be, your titan of the future. And then you got Bijan Robinson, who, if you're running, what is it, an option handoff with Justin Fields and Bijan Robinson, and then you can put Tyler Algier in there in the mix. You still got Cordell Patterson. I mean, that's a lot of weapons to work with. And in Pittsburgh, and I'm not trying to hate on Pittsburgh. I mean, they're a fine team, but they weren't a very good team offensively last year, and we'll see what Arthur Smith can do. But who's their number one option? Is it Deontay Johnson? Is it Pat Fryermuth? George Pickens maybe, and I think he's a great blocker, but I don't think he's a guy you want to be given 10 targets to a game or anything like that. So, and obviously their first rounder is a lot deeper than ours. So, yeah, it's just as far as development for Justin Fields in Atlanta.
So, I feel like Atlanta is like the obvious one to go to. Just looking at everyone else, nobody's going to be trading like away like a lot. I mean, just looking at, Adam Schefter said in an interview that when the Jets moved off of Sam Darnold to draft Zach Wilson back in 2021, they sent him to Carolina in exchange for a 6th round pick, next year's 2nd, and then next year's 4th. So a 2nd, 4th, and 6th round pick. That's what it took to get someone who they drafted in the 1st round gone in the span of 3 years. And that's exactly what the Bears are in. But at this point, people are starting to think that probably Justin Fields is better now than Sam Darnold was when he got traded.
Yeah.
So the running, it's like, what is the value there? And I think that you kind of hit what Atlanta would have to give up, which is a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th. But there was a couple, like some was
like
next year, some was this year. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that probably works, especially because of, I think you were giving 3 picks this year, because 1 wasn't your own, but 2 were your own this year, and then that future.
Correct.
I think it's a future 4th.
Yeah.
This year's 6th, this year's 2nd, and then the Jaguars 3rd.
Yeah. Yeah, so it would basically be trading. Let's just keep it simple. Calvin Ridley, a second, a fifth, and a next year, or let's say a sixth, next year fourth. So 3
Yeah.
picks and a player, but they're not
I
getting the
think,
player.
yeah. And I think for Atlanta, just because of where their pick is currently, like, because that their second round pick this year is about pick 40, if I remember correctly.
You
41,
43.
43.
Yeah,
So it's like, it's a pretty high
decently
pick.
high.
I
Yeah,
mean, like, at that point, you could get someone who you were thinking was like a late first round pick, at that spot. Um, and then, but like some teams that I'm thinking, Atlanta's an obvious one. I don't see Minnesota. I mean,
yeah,
Minnesota might pick up the phone, but I just don't think that, you know, you don't see interdivisional trades like that,
yeah,
really.
yeah, yep.
Vegas has been rumored, but I think that they're going to probably try to get someone in free agency. Didn't work last year, but it might work this year. But that's a conversation we'll have to have in about 3 or 4 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
after free agency happens, because then maybe the Raiders are in contention, or maybe they'll just end up drafting someone. But two kind of out of left field, that I've just been thinking about for the last few hours here. The first one, uh, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about them, so I'm just going to talk them through. The New York Jets.
Mm.
So we already said the running price isn't very expensive. You can give up a few picks, but it's nothing crazy. You're not giving up first. You're giving up maybe 1, maybe 2 seconds at the very most. Um, but Aaron Rodgers, if he has an injury next year, he's done. He's not playing quarterback again. The Jets
Yeah,
they're not dealing with that. But if he does go down, are you really trying to go with Zach Wilson for another year where you're like, this is our guy? This also gives Justin an opportunity to be behind one of the greatest quarterbacks that he's ever really played against. He gets to see someone who is a much better thrower, someone who can sense pressure. These two things that, one, he needs a lot of development in. Another one where he could use some work. He senses pressure well. He can escape well, but he doesn't extend plays. He just really just tucks in and runs. You get out of the pocket, keep your eyes downfield, you make some great plays. That's what Aaron Rodgers does very well.
mm-hmm.
So I feel like this could be a very good opportunity for him to learn a year and then take the reins when Aaron Rodgers retires after next year. And then once Aaron Rodgers' deal is done, then you can pay Justin Fields too. Now it's a work in progress type kind of trade, but I feel like that it could be beneficial for the Jets to do that because they already got their wide receiver, who, might I add, he played with at Ohio State. And you also still have a decent amount of cap room. And at pick 10, you can still get an offensive tackle this year, which is what
Yeah,
you should have gotten last year.
yeah. Um, I'll respond real quickly to that team. Here's the thing. I like the fit a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense. And, what even capitalizes this even more is that we saw what, a good Jordan Love looked like this year, sitting behind Aaron Rodgers. And I think that, I think Justin is a little bit more physically talented than Jordan Love, so he might not need the whole 2-3 years. Now, yeah, like you said, with Garrett Wilson, makes a lot of sense. Now here is the problem with New York. They don't have the second this year. So without that second, I don't know. You can just click on, well, that works too, but you can click on the team's name in the big board or in the
Gotcha.
NFL home. But yeah, they don't have a second this year. They have a third, fourth. They have 2 fourths, a sixth, and 3 sevenths. And so they don't even have a fifth. They don't have a second. And so I just think it makes it really hard to do that unless they're willing to take a future second, a third this year, and maybe a fourth. So it'd be a third, a fourth, a second, and then maybe a future fourth. So you'd be giving up a little bit, probably about the same. I mean, you'd be delaying your second rounder, which you would assume if A-Rod is healthy, it's not going to be a big loss. It is a second rounder, but
Yeah.
but yeah. So, but like you said, you get to keep that 10 at least. So if you can draft a tackle, or I know it might sound kind of crazy, or if one of those receivers is still there somehow, which I don't know if they will be, then at least you give him enough weapons where it's like, yeah, we might not have the greatest line, but you might not have to really sit back there all that long. So because you
And
can
you
just
have
get it
Brees
out.
Hall.
Yeah, and you have Brees Hall. Yeah, so it could work. I just think it makes it a little bit tough. What was your second team?
My second team, it's a totally out of left field. I don't know if they have the draft capital, but I just thought about them earlier. It's a team that also has a quarterback that could be retiring soon,
I know what you're gonna say.
and with the guy who is at the helm, he would make it work.
Yeah.
But that's the Los Angeles Rams.
Oh,
Yeah, who do you think I was gonna say?
I thought the Lions could be a decent fit if
I
they
don't
don't
think
want to
so.
if they don't want to move if they don't want to keep Goff long term.
They drafted Hendon Hooker in the third round last year.
Yeah.
I think that they're gonna let him develop a
See
little
what he
bit.
has. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But I think the Rams could be very interesting here. So they do have a second. They have 2/3 that they could give up. They got 3/5, and they got 4/6. If they wanted to, they could throw 2 or 3 draft picks this year, 2 or 3 next year. Now it depends how long can Stafford really go.
Yeah.
If he got injured this year or didn't play as much this year, then maybe the Rams would be like, okay, it's time to find our new guy. But Stafford had a good year, so maybe he still has a few years left in the tank. But it could also be one of those things where like they see the writing on the wall that Stafford could be hanging it up soon. So yeah, I mean they got a bunch of draft capital this year alone. But yeah, I just think that this is a team that's kind of fun and interesting. Will it happen? Yeah, probably not. But imagine Sean McVay with an elusive Justin Fields. Something he hasn't had an elusive quarterback, the entire time that he's been head coach, with the exception of Baker Mayfield for like 7 games last year.
Yeah, I think that number one, obviously, they have the most capital to give up, and I believe they have their future picks as well. If they don't want to dig into all those fifths, I mean, you really need 3/5 and 3/6. I mean, no, you can give up a 6 and a 5th and feel okay about it,
Including 2 back-to-backs, one in the 6th and one in the 5th.
Right. So I don't think you need all that. And then you could even say, well, we'll give you one of our thirds this year, and then we'll also give you a second next year. So you get a second, a third, a fifth, a sixth. Which, maybe that's about the same going rate as the other teams. But here's the thing, is that you get most of those picks this year. So I think that matters. I think it matters to a team that wants that development time. Because I think, we don't really ever talk about this, but in sports, I think every year you trade your pick in the future, right? Unless it's a team that you believe as a GM is going on the downhill. And there's depreciation to those years, because there's uncertainty and you want that development time. You want to get them in the building year 1, year 0, if you can, start of the rebuild. And then by the time the rebuild is supposed to be finished, they're where they need to be. So yeah, they would be able to trade. I think we froze.
There we
Are
go.
you good?
Yeah, I'm back.
All right, you gonna be able to cut that out, or how do you want to start this back up?
You could just keep going with your point.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, I think it's good. It's a good way for the Bears to get a lot of picks back. The only thing I would say about that is that we don't know about Matt Stafford, and so I think that unless you know internally that he's going to want to retire next year, then it would be a decent option. And I looked up his contract. He's on till 2027, but he only gets 10 million guaranteed next year, and then the rest is unguaranteed. That's what I read in the fine terms. So so yeah, we can look at it here. He's making a lot of money, but it's not a whole lot guaranteed past 2025, I believe. So yeah, potential out 2026. So after next year, or are we in 2024 technically?
Yep, 2024.
Okay, so you would have him for at minimum 2 more seasons.
Right.
Um, so you would basically, and I don't know if Justin Fields would go for this. I feel like he would probably want to go somewhere else, and that's why it makes the fit a little bit funky. But you could say, hey, Justin, we want you as our franchise quarterback, and we'll pay you when your time is up, but we're going to need you to sit for at least a year, maybe two, maybe two. Um, so yeah, it it makes it a little bit weird because you have to have buy-in from Justin and Matt, because Matt has to retire. So
Right.
um so yeah, he's gonna have his uh so you could pull the 5th year option on him next year, but that'd be a 25 million cap hit. Here's the thing: if you don't sign him next year and you have the 5th option, you risk losing him in free agency,
Exactly.
unless you can extend him halfway through the year. That'd be the best option for the team's salary. But yeah, one more team we could talk about here: potential Justin Fields. And I think it's a little bit more likely than the teams you name, but I personally have one guy penciled to him that's in the draft, and that's the Denver Broncos. I think the Denver Broncos could make it work. What picks are we looking at here? So they have even probably less.
Less than the Jets.
Yeah. So never mind on that. They're not going to be able to have enough draft capital to trade for him. But I,
Unless but
unless they want to
no,
give them
because
first,
I mean they could do that.
they could do that,
But
which would be risky.
that then they don't have their first pick until pick 76. That'd be
Yeah,
insane.
yeah,
But and I don't think it's going to happen, of course, because of how much his contract is. But they could trade Russell Wilson and have him be the backup in Chicago. But that contract is way too big to do that.
yeah, yeah. And I don't think the Bears want to risk flexibility for you know a backup that's honestly probably a little bit more overqualified for the position. I don't think Russ would want to do that either. Not that he would have
Right.
much of a say in it, um, but no, we'll talk about this later. But I think that they are going to love JJ McCarthy, and I think that is the spot for him at 12. Um, so yeah, um, and yeah, here's the thing about the Raiders. I think that, like Atlanta and Pittsburgh, he fits the kind of personality that Antonio Pierce would like, and I think that the city would rally around. I just don't know if he fits the scheme, and because I think with Devonte Adams, you kind of need a guy that's used to throwing it downfield. More of a pocket passer kind of presence. Um, Not saying that Justin Fields isn't good at throwing downfield, but I think you would prefer a guy that can hit guys on first reads and make sure that you can hit them. Because sometimes there's a little bit of inconsistency with his accuracy. Whereas if you go for a guy like Kirk Cousins or another free agent, I'm not sure we would have to do. I mean, we'll talk about the preview next podcast, but you could just get a guy like that who, you're going to have to pay, but it's not like you're not already paying a lot for your team already as it is, so you might as well try to win it. Like we talked about with Devontae Adams off air, it's, you keep him on the roster, you're trying to win. So, yeah.
And my thing with the Raiders is, if you do trade for Justin Fields, I feel like that is a good opportunity because, he just went from 2 years ago having Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool as his top 2 receivers to getting DJ Moore, who in terms of his team was the alpha. And he made DJ Moore look really good. DJ Moore made Justin Fields look good. Now imagine if instead of DJ Moore, it was Devontae Adams. How much better could he make Justin Fields look? So I feel like, when you have that alpha, and I think I've said this in previous podcasts before or even off air, when you have that alpha, it helps grow your younger quarterbacks quicker.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I feel like that's why, you get a lot of stunts, especially with the Browns quarterbacks for so long, because who was their top receivers? And then you finally get a quarterback in Baker Mayfield, and who was there? OBJ and Jarvis Landry. Those 2 guys helped elevate Baker to the fact where, when they were gone, Baker wasn't really doing too much. He got booted out of Cleveland, went to Carolina, where they still had a young DJ Moore and Chark and everyone, but he couldn't do anything then. He didn't have an alpha then. So he gets booted. He goes to the Rams with no Cooper Kupp. Gets booted. He finally goes to Tampa, where there's an alpha. Helps you get even better.
And Chris Godwin.
And Chris Godwin, a great number 2.
Yeah.
So I just feel like, wouldn't be surprised if Justin Fields had a good season when he goes to the Raiders, because those top guys help elevate your quarterback. But is it likely? I just feel like Atlanta's package, they're probably willing to get that because they know that they could draft a wide receiver at 8. And I feel like Atlanta just has a little bit more missing pieces, so they might be a little bit more desperate to get that quarterback, where the Raiders, they're like, we could draft someone at 13. Yeah. We're okay with that. Mm-hmm. And if that's our quarterback, that's our quarterback. But they wouldn't. I mean, neither team is going to sell the farm. But I think you guys are more prepared to give up a few more cows.
Yeah. 2 more things I have to say about Justin Fields and also about the Raiders and Falcons. One thing you didn't mention, you did a great job illustrating the vertical threats, the receivers, but who was his best running back in Chicago?
I don't even think it was Tariq Cohen.
Was it rookie year? I don't even think Herbert. He was there. Whoever it was, David Montgomery, but he was until he got to Detroit. Let's do a quick search. I mean, Tariq Cohen was okay, but he's not really an RB1,
When did he get drafted? 21? So, he wasn't even there.
Let me see who their starters. I think someone that they have. I'm pulling up their depth chart here. I don't want to stretch it. It was Khalil Herbert. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
Roschon
their leading rusher last year was Justin Fields. Followed by Khalil Herbert and then Dante Foreman.
So basically my point is he's also never had, and with the receivers, you're also going to get either Bijan Robinson, could be a potential top 10 running back, or Josh Jacobs, who has proven to be a top 10 running back when he's healthy. Because I believe you guys franchise tagged him, right? Or you extended him?
We franchise tagged him this last year, so we have to sign him to a contract. But I think he's going to be he's available in free agency.
I thought, just a quick search here, I thought I heard some news about him that happened. But maybe I didn't. Maybe I just saw something else. Yeah, maybe not. But anyways, So you're also getting a running back that is potentially top 10, and that can open up a whole lot of lanes when you got guys, receivers like those running downfield, and then you also have a running back that you can give off that can easily average 5 yards or 4 or 5 yards a carry and go for some really long runs. So I think that definitely matters too. That takes a lot of pressure off quarterbacks. And my last statement or question, my question to you is going to be, and we didn't even touch on this, which how much does it matter that he's from Atlanta?
He's a third-year quarterback, and he doesn't have a no trade clause.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the first overall pick. I don't think anyone cares except for Justin Fields. The
Yeah.
Bears don't care. Like, they say they want to do what's best for Justin, but in the end of the day, they're going to do what's best for business.
Right. Yeah.
You
They're
know,
gonna do best for the team.
if Atlanta and Vegas are giving the exact same thing, but for somehow Vegas is giving, a second round pick that's higher than Atlanta's or something like that, crazy, then they're gonna trade him to Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they really appreciate what he's done the last few years in being one of the worst organizations in the league, then maybe they're just like, you know what, you did almost nothing for us. We'll send you to Atlanta.
We'll send you home. Yeah.
We'll send you home. But yeah, I don't think that really matters all too much.
Yeah.
And I don't think Atlanta's gonna be like, he's in Atlanta, he's a Georgia boy. We're gonna give instead of a fourth, we're gonna give him a third, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see them like, we're really gonna try to get this guy. Like, would it be good for the fan base? Yeah. But here's the thing, I don't think they're worried about ticket sales. It's the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Atlanta loves their football. Like, they're gonna get tickets regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. I would say I for the most part agree with you. The Bears I don't think really care at all. I think the Falcons care just a tiny bit, maybe 2%, just because they know that he would want to come to Atlanta. I think that they know he would give his all to Atlanta, and I think that would just be a little bit extra reinforcement to maybe make the trade. But like you said, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to make the best decision for the organization, not for guys' needs. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Justin Fields would like it, but also I don't think it necessarily means that if he goes to Pittsburgh or he goes to Las Vegas that he would not try as much. Like, I don't think that's true either. I think he would. As long as the fan base appreciates him, I think he'd love to be there. So, like most athletes, I think just kind of want to play for the team and fan base that want them. So I think it necessarily wouldn't matter as much.
Yeah, I mean, it's a contract year for him. So,
Mm-hmm.
if he goes to a team and is like, I don't really want to play here, like, who's going to sign him after that?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and you won't get as much money. If you're hoping to get a $24 million deal, and you're like, I didn't really want to play for them anyways. Like, what are the odds that someone's going to sign you for even 18?
Right. Right.
And,
Or
and you're just
or
like
long
you're just
term.
like
You know.
you're just like meh about it, But like, if you're like, like, if you get traded to the Raiders, and he's like, I'm a Raider now, I'm ready to get down to business, I'm glad to be here, ready to play for these fans and everything, and then you show up and you want to win, even if the Raiders are, after the year, like, they go 9-8, miss the playoffs, he plays pretty good, people are going to be like, you know what, he got traded and still played that well. Let's go get him. Let's find his asking price and let's go get him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I agree.
yeah. Is there anything else you need to add?
No, I think we covered bases pretty well here.
All right. So, I need a date on when Justin Fields is getting traded to Atlanta right now.
So do you want like the latest it can happen, or
No, I want what day it's gonna happen. I want
you
you to
want an
prophesize.
exact date?
I
How
need a
about
prophet.
this? Can I give you a 3 or 4 day window?
You can give me a 48-hour window.
48 hours, 2 days. Is this when the trade gets announced or when it's official?
When it's official.
When it's official. Okay, let me pull up some dates here that I think just big dates for free agency and So free
March
agency
11th.
starts March 11th, April 25th.
Mm-hmm.
We're really close to that March 11th date. My gut tells me that it's not going to be before a free agency, but my gut tells me that it's not going to take long after that to trade him. Because I think after that they're going to put money in certain places and know what they want to do. So I'm going to say March 18th to March 20th.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see what happens with that. I think it could probably be a little bit sooner. I think
Okay.
that March 14th to 16th range could
Okay. So like a
be,
week earlier.
yeah, just so like those first few days of free agency are done, and you kind of know what you're getting on the books this year, and then because I mean trading Justin, you're not giving up a lot of cap room.
Yeah.
So just kind of figuring out what cap room you have, and maybe getting rid of his 1.6 or whatever he's
Right.
at, could be
Yeah.
like, that's what's stopping us from signing this guy. Let's
Right.
get this trade done,
No,
and
you're
then
totally
maybe
right. It could be the
so
difference between a signing bonus to what is it, Jalen Johnson, the corner. They need to extend him. So, I think we sometimes maybe don't talk about how much a million can matter. But what's the exact number here? Did
for
you?
salary cap,
Yeah,
I don't
it's
remember.
1.6 million. So it's about 1.5. Who knows? Maybe it could be a solid. I don't want to call him a role player, but you feel a need that number 3 corner, slot corner,
Right.
a fourth linebacker, something like that.
Yeah,
So it can
but
matter.
we'll see. Or maybe, just maybe, and we don't need to talk about it, but maybe they keep both guys after the draft. Make
No
things
chance.
really interesting.
I'd give it like a 0.00005 chance.
So you're saying there's a chance.
There is a chance, as small as that number may be.
But anyways, once again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP. Follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP